Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to cover how to apply colors and materials to a particular game object. So let's go ahead and share the screen. All right, so if you recall last time we placed a cube game object into the scene and it's positioned at the origin. Today what we want to do is actually go ahead and change the color of this object. And in order for us to be able to do that, we need to create some materials. By default, Unity applies the default material, and the default material happens to have a white color to it and no texture associated with it. So let's go ahead and see how to create a new material. So within your assets directory under the projects window, anywhere in here, you can go ahead and right click and say create. And from the submenu, select material. And let's go ahead and name this my cube material. All right, so again, we have just created a material, and by default is going to provide the white color to it. And over here, you can actually see how the material is going to look and how it's going to reflect light within the scene. So a couple of things to take into consideration here. First of all, at the really top of it, it would provide you the type of shader that is going to be applied or utilized by the material itself. So right now it's actually utilizing the standard shader, the standard built-in shader. Next, and we'll talk about what this means because there's different types of rendering pipelines, right? There's the URP, HDRP, and etc. And then this is the classic built-in shader. So let's take a look at this initially before we jump into the other ones. Then we have, as always, in the inspector window, a bunch of public attributes or properties that are going to be available at design time for you to update and configure. So one of them happens to be the rendering mode. And in the rendering mode, by default, the shader is going to uh, assume that this particular object is going to be of opaque type, but then you can have a cutout, a fade, and a transparent. So we'll take a look at a few of this, probably opaque and transparent for the demonstration. And then the next big thing over here is going to be the albedo. The albedo is pretty much how you apply colors to a particular material, and that material, once applied to a particular surface, that surface is going to take that. So let's go ahead and create the, let's go ahead and apply the red color to this material. So once you select that property, a color wheel will pop up. And from here, basically what you can do is choose your favorite color that you want to apply to this material. We have, so you can do a bunch of different things, right? You can use the mouse to actually select whatever color you want, or you can go down here on the RGB8 channels and basically from here update them numerically. So let's say if you want to have pure red, we are going to set the red channel to 255 and 00 on the green and the blue channel. So this will be pure red. And this is the alpha channel. The alpha channel will be important if you start working with transparency. But right now we are not going to apply the alpha channel. So it can stay at that particular level. So we have our material defined. It's representing by a red color. And the easiest way to apply a material to a particular object is by, if the object is actually visible in the scene view, you can just simply drag and drop it onto the object, and you would see that the object now changes its color to whatever that material happens to be. If you select the cube game object from the hierarchy window, you would also notice in the inspector that the new material has been applied to it. You also get the name of the material. And also from here, you can update the properties if you choose to do so. Another thing that I want to bring to your attention is actually this mesh renderer component. And under the mesh renderer component, there could be multiple materials. In this particular case, we only have one material applied to the object. But some objects, more complicated, complex scenarios, you might have multiple objects. So from here, you can also determine which objects are associated with which materials and so forth. So this was a quick illustration of how to create uh, a basic material, how to change the color of the material, and also how to apply the material to a particular game object. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other features. I'm going to go ahead and select the material, and in this inspector window, the other thing to note is that if you do change the properties of the material, that will affect all of the game objects and all of the surfaces that are going to be utilizing that particular material. So for example, let's say we have like 1,000 cubes and each one of them is associated with this my cube material. By simply changing the configuration of the material, that will apply to all of those cubes. So that is good, and also it can be bad. It really depends on the scenario. So let's say if you want to have a specific color applied to a specific cube, but not every single cube, then you might have to create separate distinguished materials, and that way you can control which materials are applied to which game objects. And in that particular case, whichever material that you update, it only will update the objects that are associated with the material. So let's go ahead and see now how we can create another cube. So right click here, go to 3D objects and say cube. And let's call this cube 1. And we are going to use the transform and translate toolbars to move the cube. And notice that this newly instantiated cube takes the default material applied to it, which is basically the white color. So if I go ahead and just drag and drop that material that we created previously, it would take whatever color that material has. So let's go ahead and create a new one. And let's call this my transparent cube material. And the first thing I want to do is actually change the render mode. And we are going to change the render mode from opaque to transparent. And next, what I would like to do is change the color, the albedo property. And let's put this, make it green. So let's go ahead and put it into green. And let's update the red channel to 0. Green channel should be 255. Blue channel is 0. And now, because we are transparent, the rendering mode is transparent. If I play around with the alpha channel, you would notice that slowly the material sample displays its transparency, right? So let's go ahead and keep the transparency at 122. And let's go ahead and apply this new material to the newly generated cube. And notice over here what happened. Let's in fact move this in front of the first cube. So both in the scene view and also in the game view, notice that how you can see the cube behind the transparent cube. So this is pretty cool. I mean, with just a basic standard shader, you can do really cool stuff as far as materials are concerned, you can also apply textures. So let's go ahead and create a texture material. So right click, create material, and we're gonna call this one my cube textured material. And we'll keep this one opaque as well. And let's keep the albedo to white. But this time what we'll do is that we are going to apply a texture to the material. So I have gone ahead and downloaded a couple of textures here, all of them being a happy face. And what I want to do is apply the first one, happy face one, to my new material. So you can simply drag and drop that over there. And now you would notice that the material has this nice happy face on top of it. So let's go ahead and create a new cube. In fact, we can duplicate it now, right? So let's say if you want to duplicate a particular cube or the same object in the scene, instead of right-clicking and going through the context menu, you can simply just select that game object and then do Control D, and that would duplicate the actual game object. So let me go ahead and just change the name. And I'm going to move this newly duplicated game object up. And let's move it back a little bit. And going back to my materials, what I want to do is now apply this newly textured material to it. So I've shown you how you can simply drag and drop the materials on top of the game objects in the scene view. But assume there's like hundreds of game objects over here, and it's going to be hard for you to actually determine or select that particular game object. In that particular case, it's best to actually select the desired game object from the hierarchy window. And then basically what you do in the inspector, you drag and drop the material into the inspector, and that would also do the same trick, basically applying the selected material to the selected game object. And here we have the result. Pretty cool. A happy face. All right, so now let's go ahead and how transparent materials with textures work. So let's go ahead and create a new material again. And this time we're going to call it my cube texture transparent material. And this time I'm going to select a different texture. And this is important. Your texture that you're going to be applying to the texture node within the shader, the material, has to be compatible with the transparent alpha channel. So in this particular case, I do have a texture that has transparency in there. Notice that since our render mode is in opaque, it ignores that alpha channel transparency. So what we need to do is that we should select the render mode and change it to transparent. And now notice that it takes the alpha channel that's embedded within the texture into consideration when it's applying or mapping the texture on top of the material surface. So let's go ahead and create a new cube. I'm just going to duplicate our last cube, move it here. I'm going to change the name to cube 3. And now what I'm going to do is apply that transparent texture to it. All right. So notice that now we have a transparent texture also applied to our game object. So let me go ahead and change the view of the camera. So you can select the main camera and go to game objects, and from there select Align with View, or you can do the shortcut Control-Shift-F. Basically, your game view will be realigned with whatever the camera view is in the scene. So this is a handy tool to know, so you can quickly reorient uh, and observe how things will look in real time uh, from different perspectives. All right, so that's it for now. And for our next episode, we'll go ahead and combine a bunch of things that we have covered so far and try to come up with a simple game scenario. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. All right, thank you for stopping by and see you guys next time.